There is an old saying in the Buddhist tradition: the quieter you become, the more you can hear. Tonight, we will explore this together. We will let the mind grow still. We will let the heart soften and open. And in that opening, we may remember something precious that we have always carried within us. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. In the hours ahead, we will explore gentle teachings and timeless stories. We will discover that peace is not something far away to be achieved, but something close and intimate, waiting patiently for us to return. For now, you can set everything down. This is not a journey of effort. It is a journey of release. Like a river finding its way to the sea, we do not need to push. We only need to allow. So let your body settle into stillness. Let your breath find its own natural rhythm. And when you are ready, let us begin this journey together. There is a question that lives quietly in many hearts. It rises when we pause long enough to hear it. What is all this busyness for? Where are we rushing to with such urgency? And in all this doing, what have we forgotten? Most of us move through our days at a pace that leaves little room for stillness. We wake to alarms. We check our messages before our feet touch the floor. We hurry through meals. We fill our hours with tasks and obligations, and when evening comes, we often feel more depleted than when we began. Our shoulders have crept up toward our ears. Our jaws have tightened without our noticing. Somewhere along the way, we have picked up worries and tensions and stored them in our bodies like old letters we forgot to open. This is the texture of modern life for so many of us. And yet, beneath all this activity, there is a quiet longing, a whisper that says, there must be something more. There must be a way to feel at home in our own skin again. This longing is not a sign that something is wrong with us. It is a sign that something is right. It is the voice of our deeper nature calling us back to ourselves. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." These words, spoken so long ago, feel especially true today. We have looked outside ourselves for peace in so many ways. We have sought it in achievements and possessions, in the approval of others, in staying endlessly busy so we do not have to feel what we carry. And still, the peace we long for remains elusive. What if it has been here all along? What if the quiet mind and the open heart we seek are not distant destinations but our natural home, simply waiting for us to return? When people first come to meditation, they often ask, what is it for? Will it help me feel less stressed? Will it make me calmer? Will something special happen if I sit long enough? These are natural questions, and the answer is both simple and vast. Yes, meditation can help ease the weight of stress. Yes, it can bring moments of calm, but these are not its deepest gifts. The true invitation of meditation is something more profound. It is an invitation to come home to ourselves, to remember something essential that we have always carried but somehow forgotten in the busyness of our days. There is an innate wisdom within each of us. It is not something we need to acquire or achieve. It is already present, like the sky behind the clouds. When we sit in stillness, we begin to clear away the clouds. We begin to remember what has been true all along. The Buddhist tradition speaks of this as our true nature or our original mind. It is the part of us that existed before we learned to be anxious, before we accumulated all our worries and identities and fears. It is peaceful. It is clear. It is infinitely kind. And it has never left us. We have only wandered away from it. Meditation is simply the practice of wandering back. Let us explore what happens when someone finally stops running, when they allow themselves, even for a short time, to simply be still. There is a retreat center nestled in gentle hills where people come to practice silence and meditation. Some come for a day, some come for a week or longer, and something remarkable happens as the days unfold. At first, when people sit down, there is a kind of settling. The body begins to release what it has been holding. Those shoulders that were so tense begin to soften. That tightness in the jaw begins to ease. It is as though the body has been waiting for permission to finally let go. A meditation teacher who has led many such retreats describes it this way. When we first arrive, we carry so much. We carry the complexity of our lives. We carry the unfinished tasks and the unspoken words. We carry the grief we have not had time to tend to, and the joy we have not had space to feel. It is all there, stored in our bodies, waiting. And then, in the silence, it begins to rise. Sometimes there are tears, not tears of sadness exactly, but tears of release. The grief that has been waiting patiently for attention finally has room to flow. The longing that has been pushed aside finally has space to breathe. This is not a breakdown. It is an opening. One woman who attended such a retreat spoke of her experience. "I did not know I was carrying so much," she said. "I thought I was fine. I thought I was handling everything. But when I finally stopped, I realized my body had been holding years of tension, years of things I had not let myself feel." She paused, searching for words. It was like taking off a heavy coat I did not know I was wearing. Layer after layer. And underneath, there was something lighter, something that felt like myself again. This is the gift of stillness. It allows us to unlayer, to set down what we have been carrying. And in that setting down, we begin to rediscover who we are beneath all the accumulated weight. One of the most beautiful things to witness in the practice of meditation is what happens to people over time. Not just in a single sitting, but over days of sustained quiet and presence. There is a teacher who has observed this for many years. He describes it with wonder in his voice. After a few days of retreat, he says, people begin to look younger. I know that sounds like something one might try to sell in a bottle, but it is true. Their faces soften. The lines of worry begin to ease. There is a light that returns to their eyes, a kind of openness that was hidden before. He pauses, remembering, I have seen this happen again and again. Someone arrives, looking tired, looking burdened, and after a week of silence and meditation, they look like a different person. Not because anything was added to them, but because something was finally allowed to fall away. This is not magic. It is simply what happens when we give ourselves permission to rest. When we stop the endless doing and allow ourselves to simply be. The Buddha spoke of this natural radiance that lives within each person. He called it our luminous mind. He said that this mind is naturally bright and clear, and that it only appears clouded because of passing visitors like worry and fear and grasping. When those visitors are allowed to move on, the natural brightness shines through. You have probably experienced glimpses of this yourself. Those moments when you wake early, before the day has begun its demands, and there is a stillness and a freshness to everything. Or those times in nature when the beauty around you quiets your inner chatter and you feel suddenly wonderfully present. These are moments when the clouds part and your natural radiance shines through. Meditation is simply a way of inviting more of those moments, of creating conditions where the clouds can clear and stay clear a little longer. Let us explore a story from long ago. There once was a traveler who had been journeying for many years. He had crossed mountains and rivers, passed through villages and cities, always searching. He was not entirely sure what he was searching for, but he knew that something was missing. Something essential that he had lost long ago. One evening, exhausted from his wanderings, he came to a small monastery tucked into a hillside. The monks there welcomed him with warm tea and a simple meal. He sat by the fire, grateful for the rest. An elderly monk sat down beside him and asked, "What brings you on your journey?" The traveler sighed. "I am looking for peace," he said. "I have looked everywhere, but I cannot find it. I have climbed sacred mountains. I have bathed in holy rivers. I have sought out teachers and studied their words. Still, the peace I seek remains beyond my reach." The old monk nodded slowly, his eyes full of kindness. "Tell me," he said, "in all your travels, where have you not looked?" The traveler considered the question. He had looked in temples and caves, in books and in rituals. He had looked in the faces of sages. He had looked in the beauty of sunsets and the stillness of forests. Where had he not looked? "I do not know," he finally admitted. The monk smiled gently. "Have you looked here?" he asked, placing his hand over the traveler's heart. "Have you been still long enough to look within?" The traveler felt something stir in his chest. "I have been so busy searching," he whispered. "I never thought to stop." "Then perhaps," the monk said, "your journey ends where it begins. Not somewhere far away, but right here. Right now, in the stillness of your own heart." The traveler stayed at the monastery for many months. He learned to sit in silence. He learned to let his busy mind settle like sediment in a still pond. And slowly, gently, he discovered what he had been seeking. It had never been lost at all. It had been waiting, patiently and tenderly, exactly where he was. When we finally allow ourselves to be still, something else begins to surface. The old teachings call it the unfinished business of the heart. These are the things we have not had time or space to feel, the sorrows we have postponed, the gratitude we have not expressed, the creative impulses that have been waiting in the wings, the words we never said to someone we loved. In the rush of daily life, these things get pushed aside. There is always something more urgent, more demanding. And so the unfinished business accumulates, like letters we meant to answer but never quite got to. When we sit in stillness, these things begin to rise. Not all at once, but gently, as the mind grows quiet enough to receive them. A man once shared what happened during his first meditation retreat. "I had not cried in years," he said. "I thought I was just not a person who cried anymore. But on the third day of sitting, tears began to flow. I did not even know what they were for at first. And then I realized they were for everything, for all the beauty I had not paused to appreciate, for all the losses I had not taken time to grieve, for all the love I had not expressed." He shook his head in wonder. "It was as though my heart had been waiting for years for me to finally be still. And when I was, it had so much to say. This is not something to fear. It is something to welcome. When the unfinished business of the heart is allowed to move through us, we become lighter, clearer, more present. We are no longer carrying the weight of all we have not felt." The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it. But to be truly attentive, we must first clear away what stands between us and the present. We must allow the old to move through so the new can arrive." There is a simple image that captures the essence of what happens when we sit in stillness. Imagine a pool of water that has been stirred and churned by wind and activity. The water is cloudy, full of sediment. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see your own reflection clearly. Now imagine what happens when the wind stops, when the activity ceases, when the water is allowed to simply be. Slowly, gradually, the sediment begins to settle. The water grows clearer, and in time, you can see all the way to the bottom. You can see your own reflection with perfect clarity. This is what happens when we quiet the mind and open the heart. The constant activity of thought, the winds of worry and planning and remembering, these stir up so much sediment. We cannot see clearly. We cannot feel what is true. But when we sit in stillness, the sediment settles, the mind clears, and we begin to see what has been there all along. We begin to feel what we truly feel. We begin to know what we truly know. The Buddha described this state as clear seeing. It is not about adding anything new. It is simply about letting what is already true become visible. You do not need to go on a long retreat to begin this journey home. You do not need special training or years of practice. The door to stillness is always available, always close at hand. Right now, in this very moment, you can begin. As you rest your attention on the breath, you may notice thoughts arising. Worries about tomorrow, plans and lists and conversations replaying. This is perfectly natural. The mind does what the mind does. But here is the gentle invitation. Instead of following those thoughts, simply notice them and return to the breath. Again and again, as many times as needed. There is no failure in this practice. There is only returning. Each time you notice that you have wandered and gently come back, you are strengthening something precious. You are remembering the path home. You are practicing the art of settling, of letting the sediment fall away, of allowing your natural clarity to emerge. This is the practice of a quiet mind and an open heart. It is simple, but it is not always easy. And yet, with patience and kindness toward yourself, it becomes more and more natural. Like water finding its way downhill. Like a bird remembering how to sing. There is a beautiful paradox in this journey. We speak of coming home to ourselves, but we never truly left. We speak of finding peace, but peace was never lost. We speak of remembering who we are, but our true nature has never changed. What changes is our awareness. What shifts is our attention. We learn to look in the right direction. We learn to be still long enough for the clouds to clear. And when they do, we discover something extraordinary. That the peace we sought in 1,000 places was here all along. That the home we longed for is the heart we already have. That the person we hope to become is the person we have always been, underneath the layers of worry and striving and forgetting. The ancient teachers called this beginner's mind. It is the fresh, open awareness of someone who sees the world without all the accumulated judgments and fears. It is the mind of a child, full of wonder, and it is available to you in this very moment. All you need to do is be still. Let your mind grow quiet. Let your heart grow soft. And remember, you are not your worries. You are not your to-do list. You are not the opinions others have of you or the judgments you have of yourself. Beneath all of that, you are something vast and peaceful and infinitely good. This is your true nature. This is your original home. And the door is always open. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a breath and let it out slowly. And when you are ready, we will continue together. As the mind grows quiet and the heart begins to open, something else becomes possible. We begin to see differently, not just the world around us, but ourselves. And what we see may surprise us. Most of us carry a quiet suspicion that we are not quite enough. That if people really knew us, they would see our flaws, our failures, our secret fears. We compare ourselves to others and find ourselves lacking. We replay our mistakes and wince at the memory. We have assembled, over the years, a kind of case against ourselves. A long list of evidence for our unworthiness. But what if this is not the truth? What if the way we see ourselves is like looking at the sky and seeing only clouds, forgetting entirely about the vast blue expanse behind them? The ancient Buddhist texts begin with a remarkable phrase. When addressing those who come to learn, the teacher says, "O nobly born, O you who are the sons and daughters of the awakened ones, remember who you really are." These words are not flattery. They are not wishful thinking. They are an invitation to see past the clouds to what has always been true. That within each of us lives something radiant and good. Something that cannot be diminished by our mistakes or obscured by our doubts. Something that the old teachers called our Buddha nature or our original goodness. This is not something we need to earn or achieve. It is our birthright. It is what we are made of. And the journey of meditation, of quieting the mind and opening the heart, is simply the journey of remembering this, of wiping the dust from the mirror so we can finally see our own face clearly. There is a story told of a monk who spent many years in practice. He was diligent and sincere, sitting for long hours, following all the teachings with great care. And yet, he could not shake the feeling that enlightenment was beyond his reach, that he was somehow not good enough, not pure enough, not wise enough to awaken. One day, he went to his teacher in frustration. "I have practiced for so many years," he said. "I have followed every instruction, and still, I feel no closer to awakening than when I began. What am I doing wrong?" The teacher looked at him with great tenderness. "Come," she said. "Walk with me." They walked together through the monastery garden, past flowering trees and moss-covered stones. The teacher said nothing for a long while. Then she stopped beside a small pond. "Look into the water," she said. "What do you see?" The monk looked down. The surface of the pond was covered with fallen leaves and debris. "I see leaves," he said. "I cannot see the bottom." The teacher nodded. She knelt down and began gently clearing the leaves away, pushing them to the edges of the pond. Slowly, the water became clear. And there, at the bottom, something caught the light. The monk leaned closer and saw a small golden statue resting on the stones below. "That statue has been there all along," the teacher said. "It did not appear when I cleared the leaves. It was simply revealed. Your true nature is the same. It is not something you must create through practice. It is something you uncover. The leaves of doubt and striving and self-judgment have simply hidden it from your view." The monk stared at the golden form shimmering beneath the clear water, and something in him began to shift. "You have been searching for what you already possess," the teacher said softly. "You have been trying to become what you already are. Rest now. Let the leaves settle and see what has been waiting for you all along." This teaching appears again and again in the Buddhist tradition in different forms and different words because it is so easy to forget. We forget our goodness. We forget our radiance. We become convinced that we are small and flawed and lacking. The Buddha himself addressed this directly. He said that the mind in its natural state is luminous and pure. It is only the passing visitors of worry and craving and fear that make it appear otherwise. These visitors come and go, like clouds crossing the sky. But the sky itself remains vast and clear. Think of the times you have seen a young child at play, before they have learned to doubt themselves, before they have accumulated all the reasons to feel small. There is a brightness in their eyes, a freedom in their laughter, a complete unself-consciousness in the way they move through the world. This is not innocence that must be lost. It is original nature that can be remembered. You were that child once, and that brightness has not gone anywhere. It has simply been covered over by years of accumulation, years of being told who you should be, years of comparing yourself to impossible standards, years of forgetting. The quiet mind and the open heart are the way back, not to childhood exactly, but to something even more fundamental, to the luminous awareness that was present before any of the stories began. A contemplative writer once described a moment of profound seeing. He was in a crowded place, watching the people pass by. And suddenly, as if a veil had been lifted, he saw them differently. "It was as if I suddenly glimpsed the secret beauty of their hearts," he wrote. "The depth of their being where neither fear nor longing could touch the core of their reality. I saw the person that each one truly is, beneath all their struggles and masks and defenses." He paused in wonder at what he was witnessing. All these ordinary people going about their ordinary day. And yet, each one carrying within them something extraordinary. If only they could see themselves as they really are, he continued. If only we could see each other this way, there would be no more need for cruelty or greed. I suppose the problem would be that we would fall down and worship each other. This is not fantasy. This is clear seeing. This is what becomes possible when the mind grows quiet enough to perceive what is actually there. We spend so much energy defending ourselves, proving ourselves, trying to be worthy of love. And all the while, the worthiness is already present. The beauty is already shining. We are simply too busy and too clouded to notice. In some Eastern traditions, there is a beautiful way of greeting one another. When two people meet, they place their palms together and bow slightly. The word spoken is a form of the phrase, "I honor the divine within you." It means, I see who you really are. Not your job, or your status, or your accomplishments. Not your failures, or your fears. But the sacred presence that lives at your core. Imagine what it would be like to move through your day this way. To look at each person you encounter and silently acknowledge the radiance within them. The tired cashier at the store. The distracted driver in the next car. The family member who irritates you. Each one carrying within them something vast and luminous. Each one a Buddha in disguise. And imagine looking at yourself this way, standing before the mirror in the morning and offering that same recognition to your own reflection. I see who you really are, beneath the worry lines, beneath the self-criticism, beneath all the ways you have convinced yourself you are not enough. There is something beautiful here. Something worthy of honor. This is not arrogance. It is clarity. It is simply seeing what is true. There is a difference in how cultures approach the question of identity. In some places, when you meet someone new, the first question is often about what they do for a living. We are so identified with our work, our roles, our productivity. We define ourselves by our usefulness. But in other traditions, the question is different. Instead of asking what someone does, they might ask what form of the sacred they are drawn to, what moves their heart, what they worship or wonder at. This tells you something much deeper about a person than their job title ever could. What would it be like to know yourself this way? Not as a collection of roles and responsibilities, but as a being with a particular way of experiencing the sacred. Not as a human doing, but as a human being. The roles we play are important. They help us function in the world, but they are not who we are. The parent, the worker, the friend, the citizen. These are costumes we wear for different occasions. Useful costumes. Necessary costumes. But costumes nonetheless. Beneath the costumes is something that does not change. Something that was present before you took on any role, and will remain when the roles fall away. This is your true nature. Your original face, as the Zen teachers call it. The face you had before you were born. Let us explore another story. There was once a merchant who traveled from village to village selling his wares. He was a good man, honest in his dealings, kind to those he met along the way. But he carried within him a secret heaviness. He believed himself to be ordinary, unremarkable. Just a simple merchant doing his simple work. One evening, he stopped at a monastery to ask for shelter. The monks welcomed him warmly and offered him a meal. As he ate, an elderly teacher sat down beside him. "You seem weary," the teacher observed. "It is a long road," the merchant replied, "and I am no one special, just a traveler passing through." The teacher smiled. "Tell me," he said, "when you look at the moon, what do you see?" The merchant considered the question. "I see a bright light in the sky. Beautiful, I suppose, but ordinary. It rises every night." "And yet," the teacher said, "that ordinary moon illuminates the entire world. It guides travelers through darkness. It pulls the great tides of the ocean. It has inspired poets and lovers for thousands of years, all while simply being what it is." The merchant was quiet. "You call yourself ordinary," the teacher continued. "Just a simple merchant. But do you know the lives you have touched? The kindness you have shown without thinking? The light you carry without knowing?" The merchant felt something stir in his chest. "I have never thought of it that way." "The moon does not think about being the moon," the teacher said. "It simply shines. You do not need to become extraordinary. You need only to see clearly what you already are. The light is already present. You have simply been looking at the clouds instead of the source." The merchant stayed at the monastery for several days. He did not change his profession or abandon his life, but something in him had shifted. He returned to the road with the same cart and the same wares, but he no longer felt like no one special. He felt like the moon. This recognition of our true nature is not a one-time event. It is something we remember and forget, again and again throughout our lives. The clouds gather. We get lost in our worries and our busyness. We forget who we are. And then something breaks through. A moment of stillness. A glimpse of beauty. A kind word from a stranger. And we remember again. Oh yes, this is who I am. This is what I am made of. The practice of meditation supports this remembering. Each time we sit and allow the mind to grow quiet, we are clearing the leaves from the pond. We are parting the clouds to glimpse the sky. We are creating conditions for the truth to become visible. But the truth itself is always there. It does not depend on our practice. It does not require our belief. It simply is. The Buddha put it this way: you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. This is not a command to feel good about yourself. It is a statement of fact. You are worthy of love not because of what you have done or what you might become. You are worthy because of what you are. And what you are is luminous. There is a tenderness that arises when we begin to see ourselves clearly, a softening toward our own struggles. We realize that we have been so hard on ourselves, so quick to judge, so slow to forgive. We have held ourselves to impossible standards and then punished ourselves for falling short. But now, with clearer eyes, we can offer ourselves the kindness we would offer a dear friend. We can acknowledge our difficulties without being crushed by them. We can see our flaws without losing sight of our beauty. This is not about pretending to be perfect. It is about recognizing that perfection was never the point. The point is presence. The point is awareness. The point is resting in the open heart that can hold all of our experience with tenderness. A Zen teacher once said, "You are perfect exactly as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This captures the beautiful paradox of the spiritual life. We are already whole, already complete, already radiant, and yet we continue to grow, continue to deepen, continue to clear away the accumulated debris that obscures our natural light. Both are true. We are already home, and we are still on the journey. We are already enlightened, and we are still waking up. This is not a contradiction. It is the nature of this mysterious human life. As you rest here, listening to these words, perhaps you can sense what they are pointing to, not as an idea to believe, but as a felt reality to recognize. Beneath your tiredness, there is something that is not tired. Beneath your worries, there is something that has never worried. Beneath all the stories you tell about yourself, there is a storyteller who remains untouched by the tales. This is your secret beauty, your original goodness, your Buddha nature. It has been with you through every moment of your life, through your greatest joys and your deepest sorrows, through your proudest achievements and your most painful failures. It has never abandoned you. It has never judged you. It has simply waited with infinite patience for you to turn around and see it. And now, in this moment of stillness, perhaps you can glimpse, even for an instant, the radiance that lives at the center of your being, the light that no darkness can extinguish, the beauty that no flaw can diminish. You are not who you thought you were. You are so much more. Let us pause here for a moment. Feel the weight of your body. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breath. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Now that we have glimpsed something of our deeper nature, a question naturally arises. If that radiant awareness is who we truly are, then what are all these thoughts and feelings that seem to fill our days? What do we make of the endless chatter of the mind, the rising and falling of emotions, the constant stream of inner experience? This is where the journey becomes interesting, because most of us have spent our entire lives believing that we are our thoughts, that we are our feelings, that the voice in our head is who we are. But what if this is not quite true? What if thoughts and feelings are more like weather passing through the sky of awareness? What if they are visitors rather than residents? This understanding can change everything. It can loosen the grip of anxiety. It can soften the weight of sadness. It can create space around even our most difficult experiences, not by pushing them away, but by seeing them for what they actually are. Let us explore this together. Have you ever sat quietly and simply watched your mind? It is a remarkable thing to witness. Thoughts arise without invitation. One thought leads to another, which leads to another, in an endless chain of association. You might begin thinking about what to have for dinner and end up, 3 minutes later, worrying about something that happened years ago. The mind leaps and wanders with a life of its own. The old teachers had a vivid way of describing this. They said that the mind produces thoughts the way certain glands produce their secretions. Automatically, continuously, without any effort on our part. We do not decide to think most of our thoughts. They simply appear. This is a liberating observation. If thoughts arise on their own, without our choosing them, then perhaps we do not need to take them quite so seriously. Perhaps we do not need to believe every thought that floats through. Perhaps we can let them come and go, like clouds crossing the sky, without grasping at them or pushing them away. A great humorist once wrote, "My life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. How much of our suffering comes from thoughts about things that exist only in imagination? How many sleepless nights have we spent rehearsing conversations that never take place? How much energy have we wasted worrying about futures that never arrive? The thoughts feel so real when they are happening, so urgent, so important. And yet, when we look back, we see that most of them were just weather, storms that blew through and left no trace." There is a story of a student who came to a teacher in great distress. "My mind will not stop," the student said. "Day and night, it churns with thoughts, worries about the future, regrets about the past, judgments about myself and others. I cannot find any peace. How do I make it stop?" The teacher listened with patience. Then she asked, "When you walk by a river, do you try to stop the water from flowing?" The student looked puzzled. "No, that would be impossible. And when the wind blows, do you try to hold it still with your hands?" "Of course not." "Then why do you try to stop your thoughts?" The teacher asked gently. "The mind is like a river. Its nature is to flow. Thoughts arise and pass away, arise and pass away. This is simply what minds do." The student considered this. "But the thoughts cause me such suffering." "It is not the thoughts that cause suffering," the teacher said. "It is your belief in them. It is your grasping at them. The river does not suffer because water flows through it. You suffer because you stand in the river trying to hold on to each wave." She paused, letting the words settle. "What would happen if you simply stood on the bank and watched? What if you let the thoughts flow past without jumping in? They will still arise. They will still pass. But you will no longer be drowning in them." The student sat with this teaching for a long time, and slowly, something began to shift. The thoughts did not stop, but his relationship to them changed. He learned to watch the river instead of trying to control it. And in that watching, he found a peace he had never known. The same is true of feelings. We have so many of them. Joy and sorrow, hope and fear, anger and tenderness, excitement and boredom. They rise up in us like weather, coloring our experience, shaping our days. If someone were to make a list of all the feelings a human being can experience, it would be remarkably long. Hundreds of distinct emotional states: affectionate and anxious, calm and curious, delighted and disappointed, grateful and grieving, hopeful and heartbroken, jealous and joyful. The list goes on, and throughout a single day, we might pass through dozens of these states. We wake feeling rested. Then we remember something difficult and feel a pang of worry. We see something beautiful and feel a moment of wonder. We encounter an obstacle and feel frustrated. We connect with someone we love and feel warmth, spreading through our chest. All of this is the natural movement of human experience. Feelings are not problems to be solved. They are weather to be felt. The difficulty comes when we believe that our feelings are who we are. When we say, "I am angry," instead of "anger is present." When we say, "I am afraid," instead of "fear is moving through me." This small shift in language points to something important. We are not our emotions. We are the awareness in which emotions arise and pass. Think of the sky. It is vast and open, holding everything within it. Clouds drift through. Sometimes they are light and wispy. Sometimes they are dark and heavy. Sometimes storms rage with thunder and lightning. But through it all, the sky remains unchanged. It is not disturbed by the weather that passes through it. It does not become the clouds. You are like the sky. Feelings are like the weather. They will come. They will go. Some will be pleasant. Some will be difficult. But you, the awareness that witnesses all of this, remain vast and open and fundamentally at peace. This does not mean we should ignore our feelings or push them away. Quite the opposite. When we know that we are the sky and not the clouds, we can actually allow the clouds to be there more fully. We can feel our sadness without being destroyed by it. We can feel our anger without being consumed by it. We can feel our fear without being paralyzed by it. The Buddha spoke of this as seeing things as they are, not as we wish they were or fear they might be, but as they actually are. Feelings arising, feelings passing, thoughts arising, thoughts passing. The whole show of human experience playing out against the backdrop of vast, unchanging awareness. There is another way we lose ourselves, and that is in the roles we play. We are parents and children, workers and friends, neighbors and citizens. We are professionals with titles and responsibilities. We are members of families and communities. These roles are necessary. They help us navigate the world. They give shape to our days. But sometimes we forget that we are not our roles. We become so identified with being a mother or a father that we cannot set the role down. We become so attached to our professional identity that we do not know who we are without it. Let us explore a story about this. There was once a woman who held an important position in her community. She was respected for her wisdom and her ability to solve problems. People came to her with their difficulties, and she helped them find their way. This was her role, and she played it well. But she began to notice something troubling. When she came home in the evening, she could not stop being the problem solver. Her children would share something from their day, and instead of simply listening, she would offer advice. Her partner would express a frustration, and she would immediately suggest solutions. She could not simply be present. She was always performing her role. One evening, her teenage daughter said something that stopped her cold. "I do not need you to fix anything," the girl said. "I just need you to be my mother." The woman felt the words land in her chest. She realized she had been hiding behind her competence, using her role as a shield, offering solutions because she did not know how to simply offer herself. That night, she sat quietly for a long time. She asked herself, "Who am I beneath this role? Who am I when I am not solving problems or giving advice? The question felt uncomfortable. She had been her role for so long that she was not sure what lay beneath it. But as she sat with the discomfort, something began to soften. She did not need to have an answer. She just needed to be willing to not know, to set down the costume, even for a moment, and see what remained. What she found surprised her. Beneath the competent advisor was simply a woman who loved her family, a woman who sometimes felt uncertain, a woman who longed to connect without the barrier of always being helpful. She began to practice setting down the role, not abandoning it entirely, but holding it more lightly. When her children spoke, she learned to listen without immediately responding. When her partner shared a difficulty, she learned to simply say, "That sounds hard." And in that simple presence, without the performance, something new became possible. A closeness that had been missing, a tenderness that the role had been covering. We all do this in different ways. We put on our professional self when we go to work and sometimes forget to take it off when we come home. We perform our social self with friends and lose touch with the quieter person underneath. We become so good at playing our parts that we forget we are playing them at all. The invitation is not to abandon our roles. We need them. They serve important purposes. The invitation is to hold them more lightly, to remember that we are wearing costumes, not living in our own skin, to be able to set them down at the end of the day and return to something simpler, something truer. A Zen teacher was once asked, "What is the essence of your practice?" He replied, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The questioner was confused. "But everyone does that." "Not at all," the teacher said. "Most people, when they eat, are thinking about 1,000 other things. When they sleep, they are churning with dreams and worries. But when I eat, I just eat. When I sleep, I just sleep. I am not performing. I am not elsewhere. I am simply here, doing what I am doing." This is the freedom of not being caught in our roles, our thoughts, our feelings. It is the freedom of simply being present, without all the extra layers, not adding anything, not taking anything away, just here, just this. There is a lightness that comes with this understanding. When we stop believing every thought, when we stop being tossed around by every feeling, when we stop performing our roles so rigidly, something relaxes. We do not have to take ourselves quite so seriously. This does not mean we become careless or indifferent. It means we become spacious. There is room for difficulty without being crushed by it. There is room for joy without grasping at it. There is room for the full range of human experience, held in awareness that is bigger than any of it. The Buddha described this as a kind of equanimity, not cold detachment, but warm balance. The heart remains open. The mind remains clear. And whatever arises is met with the same gentle attention. Pleasant feelings arise. We notice them. We enjoy them. We let them pass. Unpleasant feelings arise. We notice them. We allow them. We let them pass. Thoughts arise, telling their stories. We watch them like birds flying across the sky. Some are beautiful. Some are strange. All of them pass. And through it all, we remain. The watcher, the witness, the awareness that holds everything and is held by nothing. This is not something to achieve through great effort. It is something to notice through gentle attention. Right now, as you listen to these words, thoughts are probably arising. Feelings are probably moving through you. This is completely natural. And right now, there is also something aware of those thoughts and feelings. Something that is not thinking but noticing the thinking. Something that is not feeling but aware of the feeling. This awareness is always present. It is your constant companion. It has been with you through every experience of your life. You do not need to create it. You only need to recognize it, to rest in it, to let it become the ground from which you meet your life. When you live from this place, the river of thoughts and feelings continues to flow. But you are no longer drowning in it. You are sitting peacefully on the bank, watching it pass. And in that watching, there is a profound ease. The mind chatters. The heart rises and falls. The roles come and go. And you, the awareness behind it all, remain. Quiet. Open. Free. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice the thoughts moving through your mind. Notice any feelings present in your body. And notice what is aware of them both. When you are ready, we will continue together. There is something we must speak about gently now. Something that touches every human life without exception. It is the presence of difficulty. The moments when things are not easy. The times when we ache or struggle or feel lost. We have been exploring the vast awareness that we are, the radiant nature beneath our thoughts and feelings. And yet, we live in bodies that know pain. We have hearts that know sorrow. We walk through a world where loss and challenge are woven into the fabric of experience. What do we do with this? How do we meet the hard parts of being alive? For most of us, the instinct is to run. When something painful arises, we turn away. We distract ourselves. We numb ourselves. We do whatever we can to not feel what we are feeling. This is natural. It is how we have learned to survive. But there is another way. A way that the old teachings speak of with great tenderness. It is the way of befriending what arises, of turning toward our difficulties instead of away from them, of discovering that what we resist often persists, while what we allow can transform. This is not about seeking out suffering or dwelling in pain. It is about meeting what is already here with a different quality of attention, with openness instead of resistance, with kindness instead of fear. A wise writer once described her experience of moving through a time of great difficulty. She had lost someone dear to her, and the grief was overwhelming. At first, she fought against it. She tried to hold herself together. She tried to push through, to be strong, to not let the sorrow overtake her. But the grief would not be pushed away. It kept rising, wave after wave, until she realized she could not outrun it. And then, something shifted. She stopped fighting. She allowed herself to be still. And she discovered something unexpected. When the pain is great, she wrote, go with the pain. Let it take you. Open your palms and your body to the pain. It comes in waves like a tide, and you must be open as a vessel lying on the beach, letting it fill you up and then retreating, leaving you empty and clear. She paused in her writing, searching for words to describe what she had learned. With a deep breath, as deep as the pain, one reaches a kind of inner freedom, as though the pain were not exactly yours but the body's. The spirit lays the body on the altar. This is a profound teaching. When we stop running from our pain and instead let it move through us, something shifts. We discover that we are bigger than what we suffer, that the awareness which holds our difficulty is not damaged by it, that there is a freedom available even in the midst of sorrow. We live in a time that is uncomfortable with difficulty. We are surrounded by messages telling us that we should always feel good, that happiness is the goal and anything else is a problem to be fixed. If we are sad, we should cheer up. If we are anxious, we should calm down. If we are grieving, we should move on. But this is not how the heart works. The heart has its own rhythms, its own seasons. There are times for joy and times for sorrow, times for lightness and times for depth. To deny any part of this is to deny our full humanity. In some ancient traditions, this was understood differently. There were cultures that honored grief as sacred. They recognized that when someone was moving through deep sorrow, something holy was happening. The heart was being broken open. The soul was being deepened. In one such tradition, those who were grieving were considered especially close to the sacred. Their prayers were believed to carry particular power. Others would come to them and ask for their prayers, knowing that the one who weeps has touched something profound. Imagine how different our relationship to difficulty would be if we held it this way, not as a failure or a weakness, but as a doorway, not as something to hide, but as something to honor. Let us explore a story. There was once a young man who lived in a small village at the foot of the mountains. He was strong and capable, admired by all who knew him. He could work longer than anyone else. He could carry heavier loads. He seemed untouched by the difficulties that burdened others. But one year, a great loss came to him. Someone he loved dearly was no longer with him. And for the first time in his life, he did not know how to go on. He tried to work through it. He pushed himself harder than ever, hoping that exhaustion would quiet the ache in his chest. But each night, when the work was done, the sorrow was waiting for him. He tried to ignore it. He filled his hours with activity, leaving no room for stillness. But the grief found him anyway, in unexpected moments, overwhelming him with its weight. Finally, in desperation, he climbed into the mountains to visit an old hermit who was known for her wisdom. "I cannot bear this pain," he told her. "I have tried everything to escape it. Nothing works. How do I make it stop?" The hermit looked at him with eyes full of compassion. She did not answer right away. Instead, she walked to the stream that ran beside her small hut and knelt at its edge. "Come," she said. "Put your hands in the water." The young man knelt beside her and placed his hands in the cold stream. "Now," she said, "try to hold the water still." He tried. He cupped his hands and squeezed, attempting to stop the flow. But the water slipped through his fingers no matter what he did. "You see," the hermit said gently, "the water will not be held. It can only be allowed to flow. Your grief is the same. You cannot stop it by grasping. You cannot control it by fighting. You can only let it move through you. The young man's eyes filled with tears. But it hurts so much. Yes, she said. It does. And that is not a problem. That is love. The pain you feel is the measure of how deeply you have loved. Would you trade that love to escape this pain? He was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally whispered. No, I would not. And let the water flow, she said. Let yourself weep when you need to weep. Let yourself ache when you need to ache. Do not run from your heart. Your heart knows what it is doing. Trust it. The young man stayed with the hermit for several days. He did not try to escape his grief anymore. He let it come when it came. He wept by the stream. He sat in silence beneath the trees. And slowly, something began to shift. The pain did not disappear, but it became softer somehow, less like a wound and more like a companion. He began to understand that his grief was not his enemy. It was part of him, part of his love, part of being fully alive. When he returned to the village, he was changed. Not harder, but deeper. Not closed off, but more open. He had learned something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. That the way through pain is not around it, but through it. That what we allow can transform us in ways that what we resist never can. The Buddha taught that pain is inevitable but suffering is optional. This can be confusing at first. What is the difference? Pain is the raw sensation of difficulty. It is the ache in the body, the pang in the heart, the challenge of loss or disappointment. This is part of being human. No one escapes it. Not the wealthy or the poor, the wise or the foolish. Pain comes to all. Suffering is what we add to pain. It is the resistance, the wishing things were different, the story that this should not be happening. It is the running and the fighting and the clenching against what is. When we resist pain, we create suffering. When we allow pain, we experience only pain. And pain, allowed to move through us, eventually passes. Like the tide, it fills us and then retreats, leaving us empty and clear. This is not easy. We have spent a lifetime learning to resist, to brace ourselves, to armor our hearts. But the armor that protects us also imprisons us. It keeps out the pain, but it also keeps out the joy. It makes us smaller, more guarded, less alive. The invitation is to soften, to let the armor down, even just a little, to discover that we can feel our pain without being destroyed by it, that our hearts are stronger than we imagined, that the openness we fear is actually the doorway to freedom. There is a practice that some traditions call breathing with. It is very simple. When something difficult arises, instead of turning away, we turn toward. We notice where we feel it in the body, the tightness in the chest, the heaviness in the belly, the ache in the throat, and we simply breathe with it. We do not try to fix it or change it or make it go away. We just stay present. Breathing in, we acknowledge what is here. Breathing out, we offer it space. This is an act of tremendous kindness toward ourselves. We are saying, I will not abandon you. I will not run from you. I will stay here with you in this difficulty for as long as you need me. And something remarkable happens when we do this. The difficulty begins to change, not because we forced it to change, but because we gave it room to move. We gave it the warmth of our attention. We treated it as a guest rather than an enemy. Everything that arises in human experience wants to be met. Our joys want to be celebrated. Our sorrows want to be witnessed. Our fears want to be held. When we meet what arises with presence and kindness, we complete a circle. We honor the fullness of being alive. This does not mean we need to go looking for difficulty. Life will bring us enough without our seeking it out. It means that when difficulty finds us, as it surely will, we have a choice. We can run and suffer, or we can stay and transform. The quiet mind and the open heart are not just for pleasant moments. They are for all moments. They are the ground from which we can meet anything. The vast awareness we have been exploring is not disturbed by pain. It holds pain the way the ocean holds waves. The surface may be stormy, but the depths remain still. You have this stillness within you. You have this capacity to hold whatever life brings. You do not need to be afraid of your own experience. You can meet it all with the same gentle attention, the same quiet presence, the same open heart. As you rest here now, perhaps there is something you have been running from, some difficulty you have not wanted to face, some sorrow you have not allowed yourself to feel. You do not need to do anything about it right now. You do not need to fix it or figure it out. Simply notice that it is there. Acknowledge it as you would acknowledge a guest at your door. And perhaps, when you are ready, you might let it in. Just for a moment. Just to see what happens when you stop running. You might find that it is not as terrifying as you feared. You might find that you are bigger than you knew. The heart that can hold sorrow is the same heart that can hold joy. The more we open to one, the more we can receive of the other. This is the great secret of being human. That our wounds become our wisdom. That our breaking becomes our opening. That what we thought would destroy us can become the very thing that sets us free. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Let it out slowly. Feel whatever is present without needing to change it. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have traveled together through some tender territory. We have explored how to meet the difficult moments of life with openness rather than resistance. We have discovered that we are larger than our pain, that the heart, which can hold sorrow, can also hold great joy. Now let us go deeper still, into a mystery that the ancient teachers pointed to again and again. A mystery that is closer to us than our own breath, yet somehow easy to miss. It is the mystery of the one who witnesses, the awareness that sees but is not seen, the presence that remains unchanged through all the changes of a life. This is perhaps the most profound teaching in all of Buddhist wisdom, and yet it is also the simplest. It is not something far away to be attained. It is what you already are. It is what you have always been. Here is something curious to consider. You have changed so much over the years. The body you have now is not the body you had as a child. Every cell has been replaced many times over. The thoughts you think today are different from the thoughts of your youth. Your beliefs have shifted. Your tastes have changed. Your circumstances have transformed again and again. Think back to yourself as a young child. Remember, if you can, what it felt like to be in that small body. The world seemed so large then. Everything was new. You were just learning how things worked, how people behaved, what was safe and what was not. Now think of yourself as a teenager or a young adult. How different you were then. Different hopes, different fears, different ways of seeing the world. You believed things then that you no longer believe. You wanted things then that no longer matter to you. And through all of these changes, through every phase of your life, something has remained constant. Something has been present through it all. When you were a child learning to walk, something was aware. When you were young and full of dreams, something was watching. Through every joy and every sorrow, every success and every failure, something has remained. What is this something? It is not your body, for that has changed completely. It is not your thoughts, for those come and go like leaves in the wind. It is not your emotions, for they rise and fall like waves. It is not your roles or your relationships or your circumstances. All of these are different now than they once were. And yet, you are still here. The one who is aware is still present. This awareness has not aged. It has not been damaged by your experiences. It has simply witnessed everything, holding it all without being touched by any of it. The Buddha called this the one who knows. A great Thai forest master named spoke of it often. He would say to his students, "You get lost in your thoughts and feelings, believing that is who you are. But those are just the contents of mind. Step back. Relax. Rest in the pure awareness that knows experience, and you will be free." Let us explore this with a simple observation that you may recognize from your own life. Think of the last time you looked in a mirror. Perhaps this morning or yesterday, you saw a face looking back at you. A face that has changed over the years. Lines that were not there before. Hair that has shifted in color or amount. The marks of time upon the body. And yet, did you feel older on the inside? Most people, when asked this question, say something interesting. They say that when they look in the mirror, they can see that the body has aged. But something in them does not feel old at all. There is a part of them that feels the same as it always has. A part that looks out through the eyes and thinks, well, the body is getting older. How curious. This is a direct glimpse of what we are pointing to. The body exists in time. It is born, it ages, it changes. But the awareness that perceives the body is not in time in the same way. It is timeless. It watches the changes from a place that does not change. You have probably felt this without having words for it. That sense of being the same person you have always been, even as everything about you has transformed. That quiet continuity beneath all the discontinuity of life. The feeling that you are still, somehow, the same awareness that looked out at the world when you were 5 years old, and 10, and 20, and every age since. This is your true nature, not the changing body. not the passing thoughts, not the rising and falling emotions, but the awareness itself, the witness, the one who knows. There is a story told about the night of the Buddha's Great Awakening. It is one of the most important stories in all of Buddhist tradition, and it points directly to what we are exploring. The one who would become the Buddha had been seeking for many years. He had left behind a comfortable life to find the answer to a question that burned in his heart. Why do beings suffer? And is there a way to be free? He had tried every practice available in his time. He had studied with the greatest teachers. He had pushed his body to its limits through fasting and austerities. He had practiced concentration until his mind could rest in states of profound stillness for hours at a time. And still, the peace he sought remained elusive. He had glimpsed many things, learned many techniques, achieved many states, but none of them lasted. None of them touched the root of suffering. None of them brought the freedom he was looking for. Finally, exhausted from striving, he sat down beneath a great tree and made a simple vow. He would not rise from this spot until he had found what he was looking for. He would sit through the night, through whatever arose, until the truth became clear. As the evening deepened, he let go of all his techniques. He stopped trying to achieve anything. He simply sat, present and aware, letting everything be exactly as it was. The night was long. Many things arose in his mind. Memories, fears, temptations, doubts. The old stories say that he was visited by forces that tried to shake him from his seat, tried to convince him to give up, tried to distract him with pleasure and terrify him with threats. But he remained still. He did not grasp at anything. He did not push anything away. He simply witnessed. And in that witnessing, something began to shift. As his mind grew very still and very clear, he began to see the nature of experience itself with extraordinary precision. He saw that everything arises and passes away. Sensations in the body appear and dissolve. Feelings in the heart rise and fall. Thoughts in the mind emerge and vanish. All of it constantly changing, constantly moving, like a river that never stops flowing. He saw how beings become caught in this flow, how they grasp at pleasant experiences, trying to hold on to them, how they push away unpleasant experiences, trying to escape them, and how this grasping and pushing creates suffering, again and again, endlessly. He saw the patterns of cause and effect, how one thing leads to another, how suffering arises from confusion and craving, how it could cease when those causes are understood. And then, as the night moved toward dawn, he asked a question that changed everything. A question so simple and so profound that it cut through all his years of seeking. He asked, "To whom does all this happen? Who is it that experiences these sensations? Who is it that feels these emotions? Who is it that thinks these thoughts? Who is the one who has been searching all these years? Who is aware of all this arising and passing?" He turned his attention around, away from the contents of experience and toward the experiencer itself. Instead of looking at what was arising, he looked at who was aware of the arising. And in that turning, everything shifted. He discovered that the one who is aware cannot be found as an object. It is not a thing among other things. When he looked for the seer, he could not find anyone seeing. When he looked for the thinker, there was no one there. There was only seeing, only knowing, only awareness itself, vast and open, without center or edge. He saw that this awareness is the space in which all things appear. It is the light by which all experiences are known. It is presence itself, pure and unchanging, the ground of all being. It was not something he had created through practice. It was what had been here all along, simply overlooked in the fascination with experience. In that moment, the sense of being a separate self, struggling through a hostile world, dissolved like mist in morning sunlight. What remained was awareness itself, vast and peaceful, untouched by any experience, free from all suffering. As the morning star appeared in the sky, the one beneath the tree touched the earth with his hand and said, simply, "I am awake." He had come home to what he had always been. There is a way of understanding this that might help bring it closer. Imagine sitting in a theater, watching a film. The film is compelling. There is drama and comedy, tragedy and triumph. You become absorbed in it. You forget that you are sitting in a seat. You forget that what you are watching is just light projected on a screen. You laugh with the characters. You weep with them. You feel their fear and their joy as if they were your own. This is how most of us live our lives. We are so absorbed in the drama of our experience that we forget we are the one watching. We identify completely with the characters on the screen, with all their struggles and triumphs, and we forget the deeper truth, that we are the awareness in which the whole show is appearing. But sometimes, something breaks the spell. A sound in the theater, someone nearby shifting in their seat, a gap in the action, a moment when the story pauses, and suddenly you remember, oh, this is a movie. I am sitting here, watching. The screen is just a screen. The light is just light. The story, however compelling, is just a story. This is what happened beneath the tree that night. The one who sat there turned around, metaphorically speaking, and saw the projector. He saw that all of his experience, everything he had taken to be so real and so solid, was appearing in a vast space of awareness. And that awareness, not the drama, was who he truly was. A Zen master once expressed this beautifully. He said, "The whole world is reflected in your eye, but your eye is not in the world." Take a moment to let that settle. The whole world appears in your awareness. Every sight, every sound, every sensation, every thought, all of it appears in the space of knowing that you are. And yet that knowing itself is not another object in the world. It is the light that illuminates everything else. This teaching can sound abstract, but it is actually the most intimate and immediate truth. It is not about escaping from experience or detaching from life. It is about recognizing what is already the case. You are already awareness. You have always been awareness. You cannot become awareness because you cannot be anything else. The clouds may cover the sky, but the sky does not become the clouds. Thoughts may fill the mind, but awareness does not become the thoughts. Experiences may be pleasant or painful, beautiful or terrible, but the witness remains untouched, like a mirror that reflects everything but is marked by nothing. The Buddha spoke of this as the luminous mind that is naturally pure and bright. He said that this mind only appears defiled because of passing visitors. Greed, Hatred and confusion come and go like travelers passing through an inn. But the inn itself remains clean. The innkeeper does not become the guests. You are the innkeeper. You are the mirror. You are the sky. Let us explore another story now. A simpler one, perhaps, but pointing to the same truth. There was once an old woman who had lived a long and full life. She had known great happiness and great sorrow. She had loved and lost, worked and rested, celebrated and grieved. Now, in her final years, she spent most of her time sitting quietly on her porch, watching the world go by. A young man from the village often passed her house on his way to and from the fields. He was restless and searching, full of questions about the meaning of life. He had read many books and spoken with many teachers, but still he felt that something essential was missing. One afternoon he stopped at her gate. "May I sit with you for a while?" he asked. "Of course," she said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "I have nowhere else to be." He sat down, and for a time they watched the road together in silence. People passed by. A cart rumbled past. Birds sang in the trees. The afternoon light moved slowly across the ground. Finally, the young man spoke. "You have lived so many years," he said. "You have experienced so much. Tell me, what have you learned? What is the secret to a life well lived?" The old woman smiled, but she did not answer right away. She seemed to be considering the question carefully, or perhaps she was simply enjoying the silence. At last she said, "Let me ask you something first. What do you see right now when you look out at the road?" The young man looked. "I see people walking," he said. "Some are going to the market. Some are coming home. I see trees. I see the dust the cart stirred up. I see the light on the leaves." "Good," she said. "And is any of it staying still?" He looked again. "No, everything is moving. The people pass by. The dust settles. Even the light is changing as the sun moves." "Yes," she said. "That is the nature of things. Coming and going. Changing and moving. Nothing stays. Nothing remains." The young man nodded. This was something he already knew, at least in his mind. The impermanence of things. He had read about it many times. "Now," the old woman continued, "here is the question that matters. What is it that sees all of this? What is it that watches the coming and the going?" The young man paused. He had not considered this before. He looked out at the road, and then he turned his attention inward, toward the one who was looking. He tried to find it, to locate it, to understand what it was. "I do not know," he finally said. "I cannot find it. It is just awareness. Just seeing." The old woman's smile deepened. "Yes," she said. "Just awareness. Just seeing. And tell me, has this awareness changed since you sat down?" He considered. The light had changed. The people had changed. His thoughts had come and gone. But the awareness itself, no, he said slowly. "It is the same. And was it different this morning? Or yesterday? Or when you were a boy?" He sat with this question for a long moment. Memory after memory arose. Different times, different places, different versions of himself. And through all of them, something had remained constant. The awareness, the seeing, the simple fact of being present. "I do not think so," he said. "I think it has always been the same. That is what I have learnt," the old woman said, her voice soft. "Everything comes and goes. The body ages. The mind changes. Experiences arise and pass away, countless experiences over all these years. But the awareness does not come and go. It does not age. It is always here, always now, always fresh." She turned to look at him directly, her eyes bright. "You ask about a life well lived. Here is what I know. When you rest in the seeing, rather than getting lost in what is seen, there is peace. When you remember that you are the awareness and not just the passing show, there is freedom. This is not something to achieve at the end of a long life. It is available now, in this very moment, to anyone who turns and looks." The young man sat beside her in silence for a long while. The afternoon deepened. The shadows lengthened. And something in him began to settle, to quiet, to rest. He was not sure he fully understood what she had shared, but he felt it. He felt the stillness beneath the movement, the presence beneath the passing. He felt, perhaps for the first time, the simple fact of being aware, and how that awareness was not disturbed by anything that appeared within it. And he began to understand that what he had been seeking out in the world had been right here all along, closer than close, nearer than near. The one who was seeking was itself the treasure he sought. A great forest master had a beautiful way of expressing this. He would say, "Try to be mindful and let things take their natural course. Then your mind will become still in any surroundings, like a clear forest pool. All kinds of wonderful, rare animals will come to drink at the pool, and you will clearly see the nature of all things. You will see many strange and wonderful things come and go, but you will be still. This is the happiness of the Buddha, the still pool that reflects but does not grasp, the awareness that knows but does not cling. This is what you are, beneath all the activity of your life. And the remarkable thing is that this awareness is not something cold or empty. It is alive. It is warm. It is intimate. It is the most tender presence, holding everything with care. The great Tibetan teachers called it the ground luminosity, or the natural state. They said it is closer to us than our own face. We cannot see it directly because it is what is doing the seeing. As you rest here, listening to these words, you can sense this for yourself. Right now, in this very moment, there is awareness. There is knowing. You are aware of sounds, perhaps. You are aware of sensations in the body. You are aware of thoughts drifting through like clouds. All of these things come and go, but the awareness remains. It does not flicker. It does not waver. It is the constant in all the change, the stillness in all the movement, the peace in all the activity. You do not need to create this awareness. You cannot destroy it. You can only recognize it. You can only rest in it. You can only remember that this is what you are and have always been. The Buddha sat beneath a tree and discovered this. An old woman on her porch knows this. A child playing in the sunlight lives this, though they have no words for it. It is not far away. It is not difficult to reach. It is simply what remains when we stop looking elsewhere and turn our attention to what is already here. You are the timeless witness. You are the one who knows. Beyond all the changes of your life, beyond the coming and going of every experience, this awareness remains. It is your deepest nature, your truest home, and it is here, always here, patiently waiting for you to recognize it and rest. Let us pause here for a moment. Rest in the awareness that is listening to these words. Notice that it is always present, always still, always at peace. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a tenderness we carry for those who have shaped us, the ones who loved us into being, the ones who walked beside us for a time and then, as all things do, moved on. Parents and grandparents, teachers and friends, those whose presence blessed our lives and whose absence we feel like a change in the air. We do not often speak of this. It can feel too large for words. The longing for someone who is no longer here. The way a certain song or smell can bring them rushing back. The strange feeling of carrying forward a life that was touched so deeply by theirs. Tonight, let us speak of it gently. Let us explore what the old teachings have to say about connection and continuity. About the ways those we love remain with us. About the mystery of what endures when forms change and bodies return to the earth. This is tender ground. We will walk it softly together. A beloved teacher once shared a story from his own life. When he was a young monk, living in a monastery in the highlands of his homeland, a message came to him one day. His mother had passed away. He loved his mother deeply. She had supported his calling to the monastic life even when it meant she would rarely see him. She had believed in him, encouraged him, loved him without conditions. She had been his first teacher of kindness, his first example of patience. And now she was gone. In his journal that night, he wrote a single line, "A great misfortune has befallen me." For a long time afterward, he grieved. The loss sat heavy in his chest like a stone he could not put down. He continued his practice, his study, his daily routines. He swept the paths of the monastery. He sat in meditation. He chanted with his brothers. But underneath everything was this ache, this absence, this feeling that something essential had been taken from him. Months passed. The seasons changed. He went through the motions of his life, but a part of him felt frozen, unable to fully inhabit the present because so much of him was still reaching for the past. Then one night, something happened that changed everything. He woke in the darkness, suddenly and completely alert. The moon was full, its light streaming through his window with unusual brightness. He felt drawn to go outside, to walk in the silver glow. It was not a thought exactly, more like a gentle pull, an invitation from the night itself. He rose and made his way to the tea fields that surrounded the monastery. Row after row of tea plants stretched into the darkness, their leaves catching the moonlight like small mirrors. The path beneath his feet was pale and luminous. Everything seemed to glow from within, and as he walked, he felt the moonlight on his arms, on his face, on the back of his neck. It was so gentle, so tender. like being touched by something infinitely soft. And all at once, he was struck by a recognition that stopped him where he stood. This moonlight felt exactly like his mother's touch. He stood there among the tea plants, trembling slightly as the understanding deepened. The softness of the light, the way it held him without grasping, the gentle, unconditional quality of its presence. It was just the way his mother used to stroke his hair when he was a boy, touch his face when he was worried, hold him when he needed comfort. And in that moment, standing in the silver darkness, he realized something profound. His mother had not gone anywhere. She had not disappeared into some void. She was here, in this moonlight. She was here, in his own body, as he moved through the night. She was here, in the air he breathed, in the earth beneath his feet, in the very cells that made up his form. He had been carrying an idea in his mind. My mother is gone. But the idea was not the truth. The truth was larger, more mysterious, more wonderful than any idea could contain. He began to walk again, slowly, feeling the moist earth beneath his feet. The night was cool and very still, and he noticed something else, something that deepened his understanding even further. These feet that touched the ground, were they only his? Or were they also his mother's feet? She had walked this earth for many years. Her mother before her had walked it. Her grandmother, her great-grandmother, generations upon generations stretching back through time beyond memory. They had all placed their feet upon the ground. They had all taken steps, one after another, making their way through their lives. And now, in some way he could feel but not fully explain, they were all walking together. All those feet, all those lives, continuing through him. "These are not my feet," he said softly to himself, his voice barely a whisper in the night air. "These are our feet." He walked for a long time that night, in communion with his mother, with all those who had come before. The grief did not vanish entirely. Perhaps it never would. But it transformed. It became something more spacious, more connected, more alive. It was no longer a wall between him and life. It became a doorway into a deeper understanding of what life truly is. Later, after many years of teaching, he would share this experience with thousands of students. He would say, "I realized that my mother had never died. I had only been carrying an idea of her death. But she was there with me in the moonlight. She was there in my body. She is here still, in every step I take." This teaching may seem strange at first. We are so accustomed to thinking of presence and absence as absolute opposites. Either someone is here or they are not. Either they exist or they have ceased to exist. Our minds want clear categories, definite boundaries. But the Buddhist understanding is more subtle, more fluid. The Buddha taught that nothing is created from nothing and nothing is destroyed into nothing. Everything is transformation. The cloud does not die when it becomes rain. It simply takes a new form. The rain does not die when it becomes river. It continues its journey. The river does not die when it becomes sea. It joins something larger. Forms change. Conditions shift. But the essence continues, taking new shapes, participating in new patterns. A Zen master once held up a piece of paper before his students. It was an ordinary piece of paper, thin and white, He asked them, "Can you see the cloud in this paper?" The students looked puzzled. Some of them squinted at the paper, as if a cloud might literally appear. Others thought it was a trick question. "Without cloud, there is no rain," the master explained patiently. "Without rain, the trees cannot grow. Without trees, there is no pulp. Without pulp, there is no paper. So the cloud is here, in this very sheet. It has not ceased to be. It has only become something else." He turned the paper in his hands, letting the light play across its surface. "And what else can you see? Can you see the sunshine that helped the tree grow? Can you see the logger who felled the tree, and his parents who raised him, and the food they ate, and the farmers who grew that food? Can you see the mill workers who made this paper, and the truck driver who transported it, and the merchant who sold it?" He smiled at his students. "The paper is made of non-paper elements. Everything that exists is made of everything that is not itself. Nothing exists by itself, alone and separate. Everything is with everything else. This is the teaching of interbeing. We are not separate, isolated beings who come into existence from nothing and then vanish into nothing. We are woven into the fabric of life itself. We are made of our ancestors, our teachers, our loved ones. They continue in us, as we will continue in those who come after. When you understand this deeply, something shifts in how you hold both life and loss. You begin to see that what we call endings are really transformations. What we call goodbyes are really see you laters. The form changes, yes. The particular way we knew someone, the sound of their voice, the specific warmth of their embrace, these do change. And we grieve that change. That grief is right and natural. But the essence, the love, the connection, the ways they have shaped us and become part of us, these do not end. They cannot end. They are woven too deeply into the fabric of what we are. There is an ancient piece of wisdom, very old, from a tradition that flourished long ago around the Great Sea. It offers a way of seeing that can help us hold the wholeness of a life. It says, "Imagine that you are not yet born. Feel yourself waiting in the darkness before form. Imagine that you are in the womb, growing toward light. Imagine that you are young, full of energy and possibility. Imagine that you are in the middle of life, with its joys and burdens. Imagine that you are old, with a lifetime gathered behind you like a long road traveled. Imagine that you have moved beyond this body, into the great mystery. Now hold all of this in your mind at once, all the times and places and qualities of a life, and you will begin to see with the eyes of wisdom. This is an invitation to step outside our usual way of seeing. Normally we are locked into this one moment, this one point in the journey, this one perspective. From where we stand, the past seems gone and the future seems not yet here. But from a larger view, all of it is present. The child you were still exists in the fabric of what is. The elder you will become is already present in potential, and those who have gone before us have not vanished into nothing. They have simply moved into a dimension our eyes cannot currently reach. The teacher who walked in the moonlight came to understand this directly. He saw that what we call death is not an ending, but a continuation in a different form. His mother had not ceased to be. She had transformed. She had become the moonlight, the earth, the air, the very cells of his body that carried her forward into the future. I realized that I am life without boundaries, he later taught. I have never been born and I can never die. This is not a belief. It is something I have seen directly. The wave does not need to fear returning to the water, because the wave has always been water. Let us sit with another story now. There was a woman who had lost her father when she was young. He had been a gentleman, a gardener who spent his days tending flowers and vegetables. He spoke softly and laughed easily. He had rough hands from working in the soil, but those hands were always gentle when they touched her. He made her feel safe in a world that often felt uncertain. After he was gone, she carried a heaviness that never quite lifted. She went on with her life, of course. She grew up. She found work. She married and had children of her own. She found joys and weathered sorrows. But there was always this sadness beneath the surface. This longing for something she could never have again. This feeling that part of her had been left behind in childhood, in a garden that no longer existed. One spring, many years later, she was working in her own garden. She had taken up gardening herself without quite knowing why. It had started small, just a few pots on the windowsill. Then a small patch of herbs by the kitchen door. Then, gradually, a full garden that grew larger each year. Working with plants soothed her. It connected her to something she could not name. On this particular afternoon, she was kneeling in the dirt, planting seeds. The soil was dark and moist between her fingers. The air smelled of spring. She was so absorbed in what she was doing that she lost track of time. And then, without warning, she became aware of her hands. Really aware, as if seeing them for the first time. The way they moved through the soil. The way they held the tiny seeds with such care, such tenderness. The patience in them. The attention. The love. And she realized, with a start that made her catch her breath, that these were her father's hands. Not literally, of course. Her hands were her own. But the way they cupped the soil, the gentleness with which they placed each seed, the patience, the presence, the love for growing things, all of it had come from him. He had planted these qualities in her just as surely as she was now planting seeds in the earth. She sat back on her heels, tears streaming down her face. But they were not tears of sorrow, or not only sorrow. They were tears of recognition, of reunion, of suddenly understanding something that had been true all along but hidden from her sight. "You are here," she whispered to the garden, to the air, to the seeds in the dark soil. "You have been here all along, and I did not see." She understood then that her father had never left her. He lived in her hands as they worked the soil. He lived in her patience, her gentleness, her love of growing things. He lived in the laughter she shared with her own children, in the way she made them feel safe, in the softness of her voice when she comforted them. She was his continuation, and he was her constant companion, woven into the very fabric of who she had become. From that day forward, the garden became a place of meeting for her. Whenever she worked in the soil, she felt her father's presence. Not as a ghost or a memory exactly, but as a living reality, continuing through her hands, her care, her patience. The heaviness she had carried for so long began to lift. not because the loss was less real, but because the connection had been restored. She understood, finally, what she had been doing all those years without knowing it. She had been keeping her father alive, not in some sentimental way, but in the most practical way possible, by embodying what he had taught her, by passing on the gifts he had given, by tending growing things with the same love he had shown. And she realized that this is what we all do, whether we know it or not. We carry forward those who have shaped us. We continue their stories. We extend their influence into the future through every choice we make, every kindness we show, every quality of theirs that lives on in us. The Buddha taught his followers not to grieve as those who have no understanding. He did not mean that we should not feel our losses. Grief is natural, even sacred. It is the heart's response to love meeting absence. To forbid grief would be to forbid love itself, and the Buddha never asked that of anyone. What he meant was that grief can be held in a larger understanding. We can weep for those we miss while also knowing that they have not truly vanished. We can feel the ache of absence while also sensing the presence that remains. Both can be true at once. The sorrow and the connection, the missing and the finding. There is comfort in this, though perhaps not the kind of comfort our grasping minds want. We want our loved ones back, exactly as they were. We want to hold them again, hear their voices again, see their faces across the table. This longing is so human, so understandable. It is the cry of love meeting the reality of change. But there is another kind of comfort available. The comfort of knowing that love does not end when form ends. That the connections we have made are woven into reality itself. That those who have touched our lives continue to touch us in ways subtle and profound, long after their bodies have returned to the elements. When you feel the sun on your face, who is to say that the warmth you feel is not also the warmth of everyone who ever loved you? When you move through your day with kindness, who is to say that kindness is not the living presence of those who taught you kindness? When you laugh, perhaps your grandmother is laughing through you. When you show patience, perhaps your father's patience is expressing itself in this new form. This is not wishful thinking. This is recognizing the truth of interbeing. Nothing is separate. Nothing is completely lost. Everything continues, transforming, interweaving, becoming. As you rest here, listening to these words, perhaps there is someone you carry in your heart, someone whose presence blessed your life, someone you miss. Know that they are not far. Know that the love you shared did not end. It has become part of you. It shapes how you see, how you feel, how you move through the world. In every act of kindness you perform, they are present. In every moment of tenderness, they continue. The moonlight that falls on sleeping faces is full of all the light that ever was. The breath you take is shared with all who have ever breathed. The heart that beats in your chest carries forward all the hearts that came before. You are never alone. You have never been alone. And those you love are always with you, walking beside you in the moonlight, placing their feet in your footsteps, continuing the journey that began long before any of us and will continue long after. This is the great comfort. Not that we will not feel loss. We will. But that loss is not the final word. Love is the final word. Connection is the final word. Continuation is the final word. Let us pause here for a moment. Breathe gently. Feel the air filling you, connecting you to all that breathes. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Something remarkable happens when the mind grows still and the heart begins to soften. We do not have to manufacture it or force it into being. It arises on its own, as naturally as flowers open to the sun. It is compassion, not the effortful kind where we try to feel something we do not feel, not the dutiful kind where we remind ourselves that we should care about others, but a natural, spontaneous tenderness that wells up from within when the barriers come down. A warmth that extends outward without any sense of obligation. A feeling of kinship with all living things. This is one of the most beautiful discoveries along the path of quiet mind and open heart. That we do not need to become compassionate. We already are compassionate. It is our nature. It has simply been covered over by busyness, by self-protection, by the habits of separation that we have accumulated over the years. When those coverings are removed, compassion flows as naturally as water flows downhill. The Buddha spoke often of compassion. He called it one of the 4 divine abodes, the 4 qualities of an awakened heart. Along with loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, compassion was seen as a natural expression of our deepest nature. But the Buddha did not ask his students to manufacture compassion through willpower. He knew that forced compassion is brittle, that it cannot sustain itself when conditions become difficult. Instead, he taught practices that clear away the obstacles to compassion. He taught his students to quiet the mind, to release the grip of self-centeredness, to see clearly the truth of interconnection. When these things happen, compassion arises on its own. It is not something we do. It is something we become, or more accurately, something we discover we have always been. There is a story told about the night of the Buddha's awakening that speaks to this. After he had seen through the illusion of the separate self, after he had realized the vast awareness that is our true nature, something else happened. Something unexpected. He looked out over the world with new eyes, and he saw beings everywhere struggling. He saw them wanting so desperately to be happy, yet doing the very things that caused them suffering. He saw them grasping at pleasures that could not satisfy, running from pains they could not escape, fighting wars that could not be won. He saw the whole vast pageant of human confusion, the endless cycles of longing and loss. And his heart broke open. There is something profound in this image. Here was someone who had just attained complete freedom. He had transcended suffering. He could have rested in peace, untouched by the troubles of the world. But he did not. He could not. Because awakening does not lead to indifference. It leads to love. When the illusion of separation dissolves, what remains is not coldness, but warmth. Not detachment, but intimacy. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of feeling for all. Tears began to flow down his face. Not tears of despair, but tears of compassion. He felt the suffering of every being as if it were his own. The boundaries that had seemed to separate him from others had dissolved, and in that dissolution, he discovered that their pain was his pain. Their confusion was his confusion. Their longing for peace was his longing. He saw a mother losing her child and felt the ache in his own chest. He saw a man consumed by anger and felt the burning in his own heart. He saw creatures of every kind, struggling to survive, struggling to find happiness, and he loved them all. Not because he should, because he could not help it. Because that is what happens when the heart is truly open. The old stories say that where his tears touched the earth, a goddess was born. She was called the Mother of Compassion, and she embodied the infinite tenderness of the awakened heart. She became a symbol of the compassion that naturally arises when we see clearly, when we are no longer blinded by the illusion of separation. This story points to something important. Compassion is not a duty we must perform. It is a response that arises when we see truly, when we understand that we are not separate from others, that their suffering touches us because we are woven together in the fabric of life. Then compassion is as natural as breathing. A writer once described a moment when this understanding came to her suddenly and completely. She had been sitting alone, feeling the particular kind of loneliness that comes from believing oneself separate from the world. She had felt cut off, isolated, a single small being in a vast and indifferent universe. And then, without warning, something shifted. It came to me, she later wrote, the feeling of being part of everything, not separate at all. I knew that if I cut a tree, my arm would bleed. I laughed and I cried and I ran all around. I just knew what it was. When it happens, you cannot miss it. This is the experience of interconnection breaking through the illusion of separation. For a moment, she saw what was actually true, that she was not an isolated fragment, but a seamless part of the whole. That the tree was not other than her. That the air, the earth, the sky, the creatures, the people, all of it was one fabric, and she was woven into it completely. From this seeing, compassion arises naturally. When we know that the suffering of others is our own suffering, when we feel in our bones that we are not separate, then caring for others is as natural as caring for ourselves. It is not sacrifice. It is not duty. It is simply recognizing what is true. Let us explore a story about how this recognition can come. There was a man who had lived most of his life at a certain distance from the world. He was not unkind, but he had learned to protect himself. When he saw suffering on the news, he could observe it without being touched too deeply. When he heard stories of tragedy, he could feel a moment of sympathy and then move on. He had built a wall, not deliberately, but through years of self-protection, and that wall kept the world's pain at a comfortable distance. Then he became a father. His daughter was born one spring morning, small and perfect, and utterly vulnerable. He held her in his arms and felt something crack open in his chest. A love so fierce it frightened him. A tenderness so vast it had no edges. He looked at her tiny fingers, her unfocused eyes, the way she turned toward his voice, and something ancient and deep stirred within him. In the weeks that followed, he noticed something changing in him. He would see children on the street and feel a warmth he had never felt before. A toddler struggling to climb stairs. A school child laughing with friends. A baby sleeping in a stroller. Each one touched him in a way children never had before. He would hear a baby crying in a store and feel his own heart respond, feel an urge to help, to comfort, to make things right. The wall he had built, that careful wall of self-protection, was crumbling, and he could not rebuild it even if he wanted to. One evening, he was watching the news while his daughter slept in the next room. There was a story about children in a faraway place who were caught up in difficult times, caught up in circumstances beyond their control. In the past, he would have watched with detachment, felt a moment of distant sympathy, perhaps shaken his head at the sadness of the world, and then changed the channel. But now, something was different. He looked at those children and saw his daughter. He felt their fear as if it were her fear. He felt their parents' anguish as his own anguish. The distance had collapsed. The separation had dissolved. For the first time in his life, he understood that those children were not other. They were his. They were everyone's. They were part of him. He sat on the couch and wept. Later, trying to make sense of what had happened, he realized that his daughter had taught him something no book or teacher could have conveyed. She had opened his heart. She had shown him that he was not separate from the world, that he could not protect himself from caring, that love once opened does not respect the boundaries we try to draw. "I used to be able to keep my distance from suffering," he said. "I cannot do that anymore. Every child is my child now. Every parent's grief is my grief." It sounds like it would be overwhelming, but somehow it is not. It is just true. It is just how things are once you let yourself see. This is how compassion awakens. Sometimes through meditation and practice. Sometimes through the breaking open that love brings. Sometimes through loss or beauty or a moment of unexpected grace. However it comes, the result is the same. The illusion of separation falls away, and we discover that we have always been part of each other. The Buddhist tradition speaks of this as the natural state of the heart. When the coverings are removed, when the protections are set down, the heart naturally opens. It naturally feels with others. It naturally wishes for their happiness and freedom from suffering. A teaching says it this way: when you discover the freedom of an open heart, there is born in you a great compassion for all beings who do not yet know this freedom. You will wish to help them, not out of obligation, but out of love. And you will discover that in helping them, you are helping yourself, for you are not truly separate. This is the great paradox of compassion. We might think that opening to the suffering of others would be overwhelming, that it would crush us, that we need our walls to survive. But the opposite is true. When we close ourselves off, we suffer in our isolation. When we open, we find that we are held by something larger than ourselves. The heart that can hold sorrow is the same heart that can hold joy. The more we open to one, the more we can receive of the other. Compassion does not drain us. It fills us. It connects us to the vast web of life. It reminds us that we belong. There is another dimension to this teaching that is worth exploring. True compassion does not distinguish between those who are easy to love and those who are difficult. It does not divide the world into those who deserve our care and those who do not. It extends equally to all beings, without exception. This can be challenging to understand and even more challenging to embody. Our instinct is to care for those who are like us, those who are kind to us, those who seem worthy. But the compassion that arises from awakening does not make these distinctions. The Buddha taught his students to extend loving kindness and compassion in all directions, to all beings, without exception. To the north and south, east and west, above and below. To those who are suffering and those who are content. To those who are virtuous and those who have lost their way. To friends and strangers and even those who might wish us harm. Why? Because the awakened heart sees that all beings want to be happy. All beings want to be free from suffering. This wish is universal. The criminal wants to be happy, even if they seek happiness in ways that cause harm. The difficult person wants to be at peace, even if their actions create conflict. Everyone, without exception, is doing their best to find their way, however confused that way might be. When we see this clearly, judgment softens into understanding. Anger softens into compassion. We do not condone harmful actions, but we recognize the suffering behind them. We see that those who cause harm are often those who are most lost, most confused, most in need of compassion. A Zen teacher was once asked how to respond to someone who had done great harm. The questioner was struggling. She felt anger and wanted to feel peace. She felt judgment and wanted to feel understanding. But she could not force her heart to feel what it did not feel. The teacher listened carefully to her question. Then he was quiet for a long moment, considering. When I look at such a person, he finally said, I see someone who has forgotten who they truly are. They have become so lost in confusion that they cannot see the light within themselves. They are like someone wandering in complete darkness, stumbling into things, causing damage without even understanding what they are doing. He paused, choosing his words with care. This does not excuse what they have done. Actions have consequences, and harmful actions must be met with wise response. But understanding why someone has lost their way helps me respond with wisdom rather than hatred. Hatred only adds to the suffering in the world. It does not diminish it. It multiplies it. Understanding can begin to heal. The questioner asked, but how do I find this understanding when my heart is full of anger? The teacher smiled gently. You do not need to push the anger away. You do not need to pretend to feel what you do not feel. Simply hold the anger with compassion, as you would hold a frightened child. Underneath the anger, there is pain. Underneath the pain, there is love. If you are patient with yourself, the heart will find its way to understanding in its own time. This kind of compassion takes time to develop fully. We do not expect ourselves to feel equal tenderness for all beings immediately. We start where we are, with those we naturally love, and we let that love teach us. A parent's love for a child, a friend's care for a friend, the warmth we feel for those who have been kind to us. These natural forms of compassion are our teachers. They show us what the heart is capable of. They reveal the tenderness that lives within us. And slowly, over time, as the heart continues to open, that tenderness expands. It begins to include more beings. First those we know, then strangers, then those we find difficult, and finally, perhaps, all beings everywhere. The Buddha described this expanding compassion as being like the sun. The sun does not choose whom to shine upon. It gives its light equally to all, without discrimination. The awakened heart is the same. It shines on all beings, wishing them well, wishing them freedom from suffering, wishing them happiness and peace. There is something important to say here about compassion and ourselves. Sometimes, when we hear teachings about compassion, we think only of extending it outward. We think of caring for others, helping others, relieving the suffering of others. And this is beautiful and important. But true compassion includes ourselves as well. We too are beings who want to be happy. We too are doing our best to find our way. We too deserve kindness and understanding. This can be surprisingly difficult for many of us. We are often much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on others. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to a friend. We judge ourselves for falling short, for making mistakes, for being human. But if compassion is truly universal, if it extends to all beings without exception, then it must include this being right here. The one reading these words. The one who has struggled and stumbled and gotten back up again. The one who is doing their best, even when their best does not feel like enough. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." These words are worth sitting with. You yourself, as much as anybody, not less than anybody, not after everybody else has been cared for, but as much as anybody, equal, included, deserving. This is not selfishness. It is recognizing that we are part of the whole. If we extend compassion to all beings but exclude ourselves, we have not understood the teaching. We have drawn a line and placed ourselves outside of it. We have said, in effect, that compassion applies to others but not to me. But there is no such line in the awakened heart. There is only compassion, extending in all directions, including the one who feels it. So as the heart opens, let it open to your own struggles as well. Let it hold your own confusion with tenderness. Let it wish you well, as genuinely as it wishes well for others. This is not a detour from the path. It is the path itself. As you rest here, perhaps you can sense this natural compassion within you. Not something you have to create, but something that is already present, waiting to be noticed. Think of someone you love. Feel the warmth that arises naturally when you bring them to mind. That warmth is compassion. It is already here, already flowing, already part of who you are. Now, gently, let that warmth expand a little. Let it include those you may not know personally but who are also living their lives, facing their challenges, doing their best. They too want to be happy. They too want to be free from suffering. They are not so different from you. And finally, let that warmth turn back toward yourself. You too are on this journey. You too deserve kindness. You too are held in the vast web of compassion that connects all life. This is not something to strain for. It is something to relax into. The heart knows how to love. We only need to get out of its way. Let us pause here for a moment. Feel whatever tenderness is present in you right now. Let it be just as it is. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a happiness that comes from receiving. We know this well. The gift we did not expect. the kindness that arrives when we need it most, the feeling of being cared for, thought of, held in someone's heart. This is a real and beautiful happiness. But there is another happiness, perhaps even deeper, that comes from giving, from offering something of ourselves to another, from extending our hand, our time, our attention, our care. This happiness surprises many people when they first discover it. It seems to break the rules of how we think the world works. We imagine that giving depletes us, that the more we give, the less we have. That generosity is a kind of sacrifice, noble perhaps, but costly. We hold on tightly to what we have, afraid that if we let go, we will be left with nothing. But the teachings of the Buddha point to something different. They suggest that generosity is not a loss, but a gain. That in giving, we receive. That the open hand is fuller than the closed fist. That one of the surest paths to happiness is to bring happiness to others. Let us explore this together. The Buddha spoke often about generosity. He called it the first of the perfections, the foundation upon which all other spiritual qualities are built. Before meditation, before wisdom, before any of the higher attainments, there is generosity. It is where the path begins. Why would this be so? Why would something as simple as giving be placed at the very foundation of the spiritual life? Perhaps because generosity is the first crack in the armor of self-centeredness. When we give, we step outside the small world of me and mine. We acknowledge that others exist, that others matter, that we are connected in ways that make their well-being our concern. Generosity is the beginning of love made visible. The Buddha once said to his students, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single meal pass without sharing something with another." These are striking words. Not a single meal, not a single day. Such was his understanding of the joy and the power that live within the act of giving. But he was not speaking of giving as duty, not giving because we should, or because it makes us look good, or because we want something in return. He was speaking of the natural generosity that flows from an open heart. The giving that is its own reward. The offering that brings joy simply in the offering. Have you ever watched a very young child give? There is something pure and instructive in it. A small child, perhaps just learning to walk, does not yet know our adult ideas about possession and scarcity. They have not learned to calculate what they will lose by giving. They have not yet built the walls of mine and not mine that we construct so carefully over the years. They simply offer. A child might bring you their favorite toy, soggy from being chewed on, and place it in your hands with great seriousness. They look up at you with eyes full of expectation, waiting for you to receive their gift with the reverence it deserves. They might offer you a crumbled cracker from their snack, already half-eaten, as if they were sharing a precious treasure. A wilted flower picked from the garden. A pebble they found especially beautiful. A bit of lint from the carpet that caught their attention. If you are outdoors together, the offerings multiply. A leaf, golden and perfect in their eyes. A stick that has some quality only they can perceive. A feather, or a bit of grass, or a dandelion gone to seed. Whatever treasure they have discovered, their first instinct is to share it with you. And they do this not because they have been taught that giving is virtuous, not because they expect something in return, not because they are trying to be good. They do it because it feels good, because sharing their joy multiplies it, because connection is as natural to them as breathing, because giving is what hearts do before we teach them to be afraid. A poet once wrote about this natural generosity of the very young. She described a 1-year-old who offers up her favorite blanket, drool-covered and worn soft from love. Her stuffed animal as big as she is, presented with ceremony. Her soggy cardboard book, the pages thick with handling. The child gives these things by way of introduction, or simply because. And if a moment later she wants them back, it is not because the giving was false. It is because the joy is in the giving itself, in the game that makes every gesture and every simple object a kind of offering. In the same way, the poet wrote, the sun drapes a golden scarf across your face. The rose opens herself to your glance. The rain shares its melancholy. The whole world keeps whispering or shouting to you like a neglected lover. The universe is generous. It pours itself out constantly, endlessly, without holding back. The sun does not calculate how much light to give. The rain does not ration itself. Life overflows, gives, offers itself at every moment. And we, when we are in touch with our deepest nature, do the same. There is a teaching that says we are happiest when we are connected. Studies have found that people who give to others, who volunteer their time, who participate in their communities, tend to live longer and report greater well-being than those who keep to themselves. Even small acts of generosity have measurable effects on our happiness. The pleasure centers of the brain light up when we give, sometimes even more than when we receive. We are wired for generosity. It is part of our design. This makes sense from the perspective of interconnection that we have been exploring. If we are not truly separate, if we are woven together in a web of mutual belonging, then giving to another is not really giving something away. It is circulating what was never ours alone to begin with. It is participating in the great flow of life that moves through all of us. A Zen teaching puts it this way: the gift is not the thing given. It is the opening of the heart. When we give, our heart opens. When our heart opens, we feel more alive, more connected, more part of the whole. The object we give is almost secondary. What matters is the gesture, the intention, the willingness to extend beyond ourselves. This is why even the smallest act of generosity can bring such disproportionate joy. It is not about the size of the gift. It is about the movement of the heart. When we shift from holding to offering, from grasping to releasing, something fundamental changes in us. We become, for that moment, more fully who we really are. The ancient teachers understood this. They spoke of generosity as a practice not because others need our gifts, though they often do, but because we need to give. We need to exercise the muscle of openness. We need to remember, again and again, that we are not separate, that we are part of something larger, that what we give away somehow comes back to us multiplied. There is also something important about receiving generosity with grace. Sometimes it is harder to receive than to give. We may feel unworthy. We may feel indebted. We may prefer to be the giver, to stay in the position of one who has something to offer, rather than the vulnerable position of one who needs. But receiving is its own form of generosity. When we receive gracefully, we complete the circle. We allow the giver the joy of giving. We participate in the exchange that binds us together. The Buddha taught that giving and receiving are two sides of one reality. Neither can exist without the other. To give is also to receive. To receive is also to give. In every act of generosity, both parties are blessed. So if someone offers you kindness, receive it fully. Let it land. Let it nourish you. Do not deflect it with false humility or brush it aside as if it does not matter. Your receiving is a gift to the giver. Your openness completes their offering. As we near the end of this exploration, let us return to the simple joy of giving. Think of a time when you gave something freely, without expectation of return. It might have been something material. It might have been your time, your attention, your care. It might have been a small gesture or a large one. Do you remember how it felt? Not the response of the other person, but the feeling within yourself as you gave. There is a warmth in that moment, a sense of rightness, a feeling that this is what we are here for, this connecting and sharing and offering. The heart recognizes generosity as its native language. The Buddha said that generosity is the expression of an awakened heart. When we truly understand who we are and how we are connected, giving becomes as natural as breathing. We do not have to force it. We do not have to remind ourselves. It flows from the fullness of our being. This does not mean giving everything away and leaving ourselves with nothing. True generosity is not martyrdom. It includes caring for ourselves as part of the whole. But it does mean holding our resources, our time, our energy, our love, with open hands rather than closed fists. It means looking for opportunities to share, to help, to connect, to make someone's day a little brighter. The world needs this. Not grand gestures necessarily, but the steady, quiet generosity of everyday kindness. A word of encouragement to someone who is struggling. A moment of patience when we could easily be irritated. A willingness to see the humanity in those we encounter. These small acts ripple outward in ways we cannot see. The person we are kind to carries that kindness into their next interaction, and the next, and the next. Generosity multiplies. It spreads. It weaves the world together. Let us rest for a moment in the simple truth that giving is receiving. That when we offer something of ourselves, we are not diminished but enlarged. That the open hand is the happy hand. That generosity is not a sacrifice we make but a joy we discover. This is one of the beautiful secrets of the spiritual path. That what seems to cost us actually enriches us. That letting go is not loss but freedom. That the more we give, the more we have to give. May your hands be open. May your heart be generous. May you know the quiet joy of offering what you have, and may that joy return to you 100-fold. Let us pause for a moment before continuing together on our journey. We have explored how compassion arises naturally from an open heart. We have seen how generosity brings joy to both the giver and the receiver. Now let us turn to something that may be more challenging, but equally important. What happens when we encounter someone difficult? someone whose behavior is harmful, whose words are harsh, whose presence seems to bring only conflict? How do we hold them in our heart? How do we see clearly when the clouds of our judgment are so thick? This is where the teachings become most practical. It is easy to feel compassion for those who are kind to us. It is easy to see the light in those who shine brightly. But can we see the light in those who seem to have none? Can we remember the Buddha nature of someone who appears to have forgotten it entirely? The ancient teachers say yes. They say that the light is always there, even when it is buried so deeply that neither we nor the person themselves can find it. They say that our recognition of this hidden light can sometimes be the very thing that helps it emerge. The Buddha taught something radical about human nature. He said that what makes a person noble or ignoble, worthy or unworthy, has nothing to do with their birth, their status, their wealth, or their position. In his time, society was rigidly divided. People were judged by the family they came from, the work they did, the caste they belonged to. These external markers determined how a person was treated, what opportunities they had, whether they were seen as valuable or disposable. The Buddha rejected all of this completely. He welcomed into his community people from every background, princes and paupers, scholars and servants, those who had been honored and those who had been despised. He saw no difference in their essential nature. He recognized the same potential for awakening in every single one. He said that the only thing that determines a person's true worth is the quality of their heart, their capacity for wisdom and compassion, their willingness to awaken, not where they came from, but where they were willing to go, not what they had done, but what they were capable of becoming. He used a simple image to make this point. He said that if you take wood from different kinds of trees and burn it, you get the same fire. An oak tree, a pine tree, a fruit tree, any tree at all. The wood looks different. The bark has different textures. The grain runs in different patterns. But when it burns, the flame is the same. Light is light, regardless of its source. In the same way, he taught, every being has a flame of spirit within them. Regardless of their outer circumstances, regardless of their behavior, regardless of how lost they may appear, that flame exists. It may be hidden. It may be flickering. It may be so covered with ash that it seems to have gone out entirely. But it is there. Our work, when we encounter difficult people, is not to judge them by their outer actions, but to remember this inner flame, to see past the behavior to the being, to recognize that underneath the hostility or the cruelty or the confusion, there is someone who wants to be happy, someone who is suffering, someone who has simply lost their way. This does not mean we condone harmful behavior. It does not mean we allow ourselves to be mistreated. It means we respond from wisdom rather than reaction. We set boundaries where needed. We protect ourselves and others, but we do so without losing sight of the humanity of the person in front of us. Let us explore a story about this. There was a man whose work required him to deal with difficult situations. He encountered people who were angry, hostile, sometimes dangerous. In his profession, there were two approaches to such encounters. One approach said that you must think like those you are dealing with, match their energy, meet force with force. Many of his colleagues adopted this stance. and some of them became hard over time, their own hearts closing as they mirrored the hostility around them. But this man chose a different way. He tried to hold in his mind that every person, no matter how they were behaving, was fundamentally good at their core. That their anger or hostility was a kind of forgetting, a loss of connection with their own true nature. His job, as he saw it, was not just to manage the situation, but to somehow affirm that deeper goodness, even when it was completely hidden. One day, he was called to deal with a man who was extremely agitated. The man had a history of difficulty, had spent years in harsh circumstances that had left him bitter and defensive. When their paths crossed, the agitated man singled out this worker for particular hostility. He directed all his rage toward him, as if this stranger represented everything that had ever harmed him. At one point, in a moment of extreme anger, the hostile man spat in the worker's face. This is a moment when most people would react. When the primitive part of the brain takes over and demands retaliation. When the heart closes and sees only an enemy. But the worker did something unusual. He paused. He took a breath. And he made a choice. He chose to remember that this man, despite his actions, was a human being. Someone's son. Perhaps someone's father. A person who had suffered, who had been wounded, who had lost touch with his own goodness. The worker chose to see past the spit on his face to the pain that had caused it. He did not retaliate. He did not harden. He managed the immediate situation calmly, and when it was time to transport the hostile man to another location, he did so without incident. But here is where the story becomes interesting. On the journey, the worker said something unexpected. He said, quietly, "If I have done anything to offend you, I apologize." His colleague, who was present, looked at him as if he had lost his mind. Apologize? But the worker understood something. He understood that this man's rage was not really about him. It was about everything that had ever hurt this man, everything that had taught him to see the world as hostile, everything that had convinced him he had to fight to survive. The worker was not apologizing for some specific wrongdoing. He was acknowledging the man's pain. He was extending a hand across the divide of hostility. The next day, the worker had to transport this same man again. This time, he made another unusual choice. He did not use restraints. He simply walked with the man, trusting that something had shifted. They reached a point in a long corridor where, if the hostile man had wanted to attack, he easily could have. It was an isolated spot. No one else was around. The worker was aware of the risk he was taking. The man stopped walking. The worker stopped too. They stood facing each other. And then the man spoke. His voice was different now. Softer. He said, "I thought about what you said yesterday, and I want to apologize to you." The worker felt a wave of emotion move through him. Here was a man who had spent years in environments that taught him only hostility, only distrust, who had learned that the world was against him, who had built walls so thick that no kindness could penetrate them. And yet, in this moment, because someone had seen past his behavior to his humanity, something had cracked open. They stood there in the corridor, these two men who had been adversaries just a day before, and something new was possible between them. Not friendship exactly, but recognition